Once everyone believes she's unstable, Julian will hand us the foundation, and I'll be in his bed before their first anniversary. I heard my half-sister say those words from inside the walk-in closet of my bridal suite while 240 guests toasted my marriage downstairs. For one strange second, nothing in my body moved except my right hand. It closed around the loose emerald from the Lascano family necklace until its gold prongs cut crescents into my palm. Beyond the closet doors, Serena Vale paced across the bedroom in high heels, speaking on speakerphone as casually as if she were confirming a dinner reservation. Through the windows came the faint sound of a jazz quartet and applause from the courtyard below. Someone had probably asked Julian and me to return for another photograph. I stood among his tuxedos and cedar shelves, still wearing a silk wedding gown worth more than my father had earned in 2 years, and listened to my new family discuss how to erase me. The wedding was being held at Belafont, a Spanish Revival estate outside Santa Barbara that the Lascano family had converted into their flagship hotel. White bougainvillea climbed the balconies. Hundreds of glass lanterns hung over the courtyard. The Pacific was a strip of blue beyond the hills, and every table carried a small sculpture commissioned from a young California artist. It was supposed to symbolize the union of the Lascano Arts Foundation and the woman Julian loved. I was Elena Robledo, 35, a sculptor raised above a stone yard in East Los Angeles. My father, Mateo, had cut limestone countertops by day and carved saints no one bought at night. He died before he saw one of my pieces in a serious gallery. Julian Lascano, heir to a hotel group and executive director of his family's foundation, had found me 3 years later arguing with a museum installer who wanted to hide a fracture in my work. My sculptures were made from broken stone joined with narrow veins of gold. Julian said the visible damage was why he could not stop looking. His love had been so direct that I distrusted it at first. He remembered the names of my studio assistants, washed clay from coffee cups without being asked, and never introduced me as a discovery he had made. When his mother, Veronica, questioned whether an unknown artist understood the scrutiny attached to their name, Julian answered, "She understands work. That's more than most people who inherit scrutiny." I should have recognized the warning hidden inside his defense. In the Lascano family, love was honest, but power always arrived with an examination. Before the ceremony, Veronica had fastened the emerald necklace around my throat. She was 62, silver-haired and elegant in a way that made silence feel like an order. The necklace had belonged to Julian's grandmother and appeared in portraits going back 4 generations. "Now you carry our history," she told me. The clasp loosened during the reception. I felt the central emerald slide beneath my collarbone, caught it, and told Julian I would be back in 5 minutes. In the suite, I opened the safe to find a simpler diamond necklace. Then the outer door clicked. Hearing Serena's voice, I stepped into the closet without thinking. My phone was already in my hand because I had meant to photograph the broken clasp for the hotel jeweler. "Continue," Veronica said through the speaker. Her voice was unmistakable. "Elena is a burden with a pretty face," Damien Cordova replied. Damien had represented me since my first public mural. He had driven a borrowed van through a storm to deliver my work, negotiated my first 5-figure sale, and cried when a museum acquired a piece inspired by my father. At her next exhibition, I'll present sketches by a dead artist and say she stole the concept for her signature series. I also have transfers ready to make it look like she laundered foundation money through her father's workshop. My shoulder hit one of Julian's suit jackets. I pressed my lips together so no sound escaped. My father had died owing money, but he had never stolen a dollar. The workshop he left me was where I made my first stone scars pieces from discarded slabs, repairing the fractures with gold wire. Damien knew what that work meant. He had watched me sleep on the studio floor beside it. "What if Julian defends her?" Veronica asked. Serena answered with a sweetness that turned my stomach. "He can't defend a wife who falls apart in public. The new kitchen employee can put something in Elena's tea. Nothing dangerous. Just enough to make her confused during the exhibition. Damien's doctor will document exhaustion, paranoia, whatever we need. Julian will be devastated. I'll be nearby." Serena was 31, beautiful in the polished, deliberate way our mother had admired. We shared the same dark eyes and almost nothing else. After my parents divorced, my mother married Serena's father and moved to Newport Beach. I remained with Mateo during the week and visited on weekends, where Serena learned that tears brought protection and I learned that competence brought more chores. Still, I had paid part of her college tuition after both our parents died. I had let her use my studio for fashion shoots. I had made her my maid of honor because she said she wanted us to stop living as rival daughters. "I did not authorize anyone to touch her body," Veronica said, coldly. "I authorized an observation. I need to know whether that girl has the strength to stand beside my son and protect the foundation when I step down." "And if she doesn't?" Damien asked. Then what happens when she falls will not be my responsibility. The silence afterward clarified everything. Veronica might not have ordered the drugging, but she had opened the gate and invited snakes into the garden. She intended to watch whether I survived the bite. Serena laughed softly. When I'm Julian's wife, the foundation will remain where it belongs, under Veronica's control. And you'll be paid, Damien. I want my $1.1 million first, he said. I've sold enough of Elena's work off the books to know exactly what she is worth. The call ended. Serena hummed the first notes of our wedding song as she crossed the bedroom and left. I stayed among the clothes until the latch settled. Then I looked at my phone. Before hiding, I had accidentally touched the video button. The camera showed only darkness and a sleeve, but the audio meter was still moving. There were 4 minutes and 17 seconds of clear voices, the forged sketches, the false transfers, the tea, the doctor, the $1.1 million, and my half-sister announcing that she planned to replace me in my marriage. My first instinct was to run downstairs and play it over the band's speakers. I imagined Julian's face, Veronica's humiliation, Serena surrounded by 240 witnesses. The fantasy lasted until I considered what would happen next. Damien would call the audio manipulated. Serena would cry that she had been joking. Veronica would invoke family privacy. While everyone argued, accounts would be emptied, files erased, and the kitchen employee warned. I had one recording, but I did not yet know how much of the conspiracy had already become real. I saved the file, emailed it to a private account, and scheduled another copy to be delivered to my attorney the next morning. Then I put the loose emerald in the safe and chose a simple diamond chain. In the mirror, my face looked pale but strangely awake. My father used to say stone told you where it would break if you were patient enough to study. The grain. When I returned to the courtyard, Julian came toward me with visible relief. He was 38, tall and broad-shouldered, but what I loved most was how little he cared about appearing important. A strand of dark hair had fallen across his forehead from dancing. I thought my bride got lost in her own wedding, he said. I put both hands on his face. For a moment, I almost told him everything. Julian would have believed me. He also would have confronted his mother in front of the guests, and by sunrise every hard drive connected to the plot might have vanished. A piece of jewelry broke, I whispered. Promise me something. No matter what happens, don't sign anything involving my work, the foundation, or my health without speaking to me alone. His smile disappeared. Elena, what happened upstairs? I need until tomorrow. Are you in danger? The honest answer was, yes. I kissed him before fear could change my face. Trust me for one night. Over his shoulder, Serena raised a champagne glass in my direction. Damien stood beside a critic who had praised Stone's scars that morning. Veronica watched me from the head table without blinking. I smiled back at all three of them. They believed the bride was still dancing inside their trap. They did not know they had just handed me the first recording of their fall. At 6 the next morning, while Julian slept, I sent the file to Lucia Barragan. Lucia and I had shared a freezing apartment during art school, before she abandoned sculpture for forensic accounting. She now audited museums and charitable foundations after donors or directors noticed money disappearing. She listened once, then called from Denver. Do not confront them, she said. My husband is asleep 15 feet away. Especially not him yet. If Damien has touched your royalties, I need him to believe he has time. Send me every contract, tax return, inventory list, and foundation statement you can access legally. Change no passwords that would alert him. Photograph the emerald mark on your hand. And Elena, do not eat or drink anything Serena gives you. I looked at Julian sleeping on his side, one hand extended into the space where I had been. Keeping this from him feels like betrayal. It is a delay, not a betrayal. But make it short. Our honeymoon was supposed to begin that afternoon. I cancelled it, blaming a structural problem with the largest sculpture for my upcoming Los Angeles exhibition. Julian was disappointed but gentle. Serena performed concern over brunch, pressing cool fingers to my wrist and saying my pulse felt fast. Veronica watched to see whether I flinched. For 2 weeks, I played a tired newlywed. I arrived late to family breakfasts, allowed Serena to see me rubbing my temples, and complained within Damien's hearing that I could not focus. In private, I worked until midnight with Lucia. We built a secure archive from 7 years of invoices, gallery consignment records, shipping manifests, and photographs. Every document uncovered another small inconsistency I had once accepted because Damien had been with me from the beginning. He called with the first visible trap on the 4th day. A collector in Switzerland wants you for a private residency, he said. 10 days, no assistance, no husband. This could make you international. I was standing beside my father's old cutting table. After the exhibition. I don't feel well enough to travel. His pause lasted less than a breath. Of course. Your health comes first. That evening, Julian found me sitting in the dark studio with a folder in my lap. You asked me to trust you, he said. I am trying. But you cancelled our trip, you jump when your sister touches you, and yesterday you asked the housekeeper who bought the tea. Tell me what I'm missing. I wanted to cross the room and bury my face against his chest. Instead, I said, at my exhibition, someone may accuse me of fraud. I need you to let me answer before you intervene. His expression tightened. Who? I can't tell you yet. Can't, or won't. Both. He looked toward the unfinished sculpture, a 6-foot column split down the center and stitched with gold. You married me 11 days ago. And I need you to trust me as much as I trusted you when I did. That hurt him. I saw it in the way his shoulders settled, not with anger but resignation. I'll wait. But do not confuse my waiting with not caring. After he left, I cried for exactly 3 minutes. Then Lucia arrived carrying 2 banker's boxes and the expression she wore when numbers had made her furious. Damien created a non-profit called Robledo Legacy Arts, she said. Your father's workshop was registered as Robledo Stone Legacy. Close enough to confuse buyers, different enough to open accounts without you. For 4 years, Damien diverted royalties and private sales. Documented total so far is $1,086,400. She spread contracts across the table. My signature appeared on some. Others used a digital mark I had never approved. Buyers thought they were supporting a scholarship program in Mateo's name. The money moved through 3 accounts and returned to companies owned by Damien. Can we prove it? I asked. Invoices, wire records, metadata, and 6 collectors willing to testify. There's more. She turned over a payment schedule. Serena received $58,000 for image consulting. Not recently. Over 3 years. I sat down because my knees stopped cooperating. The first reversal was worse than Serena wanting my husband. My sister had been helping Damien steal from me long before Julian proposed. Her affection, her sudden interest in my exhibitions, even the photographs she posted celebrating my career had been part of an arrangement. She had not joined the plot because she fell in love with Julian. She had approached Julian because the theft needed access to the foundation. I remembered the Christmas when Serena insisted on organizing my files as a gift. I remembered her recommending Damien for a private sale to a tech executive. I remembered apologizing after accusing her of using my studio without permission. Each memory changed shape as I examined it. I want them exposed at the exhibition, I said. Lucia studied me. Exposure is not the same as prosecution. We do both. We contacted an art crimes attorney named Naomi Price and a detective who specialized in financial fraud. Naomi warned me that the wedding recording might be challenged depending on consent laws and location, but it could guide investigators toward independent evidence. The fraudulent companies, forged documents, and cooperating buyers would matter more. She also told me to make no threat and accept no settlement before law enforcement preserved Damien's devices. The night before the exhibition, Veronica invited me to lunch at the Foundation's private club. She wore cream silk and the emerald earrings that matched the necklace she had placed on me. There were no menus, the staff already knew her order. Julian says you are under pressure, she said. Does he? He is worried that marriage frightened you. Marriage didn't. Her gaze held mine. The Foundation has survived scandals, recessions, and men who thought generosity made them saints. It cannot be led by someone who breaks when examined. There it was, not an apology, but a reminder that my suffering was a test she considered legitimate. Did you ever plan to tell me I was being examined? One finger stopped against the stem of her water glass. Why would you ask that? Because hidden tests are usually called traps. For the first time, a thread of uncertainty crossed her face. Then it vanished. Tomorrow will be important. Rest tonight. I intend to. She left believing she had warned me. I left knowing she was more afraid than she wanted me to see. The opening of Stone Scars drew collectors, journalists, museum directors, and most of the Lascano Foundation board. My sculptures filled a converted warehouse in downtown Los Angeles, broken limestone, scratched mirrors, black granite opened to reveal veins of brass and gold. The central work, Inheritance, rose beneath the skylight like a cracked doorway. Serena arrived in white, as if replaying my wedding with herself in the brighter dress. Damien wore a charcoal suit and carried a black portfolio. Veronica stood near Inheritance with both hands resting on her cane, a gesture of authority rather than need. Julian stayed close enough to reach me but kept the promise I had forced from him. After my remarks, Damien approached the microphone. This is painful, he began, his voice weighted with practiced grief, but art requires truth. Evidence has come to me showing that Elena Robledo built her most important series from the unpublished sketches of the late sculptor Aaron DeWitt. There are also financial irregularities involving charitable funds. The screen behind him displayed a charcoal drawing beside a photograph of my first stone scars piece. Gasps moved through the room. The images were similar because Damien had copied my sculpture backward to manufacture the sketch. Then came bank transfers labeled with my father's name. A reporter called. "Ms. Robledo, did you authorize those payments?" Julian stepped forward. I caught his hand. "Thank you, Damien," I said as I took the second microphone. "Your performance completes this exhibition better than any curator's statement could." His confidence flickered. The screen changed. Lucia displayed my original notebook, registered and photographed 2 years before the date on the supposed DeWitt sketch. We enlarged the paper fibers, the printer marks hidden beneath the charcoal, and an email from Damien ordering a graphic designer to age the page. Then we showed the actual accounts. Mateo's workshop had closed after his death. The money moved through Robledo Legacy Arts, the entity Damien controlled. "Here are the sales you hid," I said. "Here are the buyers. Here is your signature. And here is the $58,000 you paid my sister for helping you access my records." Serena's face emptied. Damien lunged toward the laptop, but 2 plainclothes officers stepped between him and the table. "This is manipulated," he shouted. "She's having some kind of episode." "That was the line you planned, wasn't it?" I asked. I played 38 seconds from the bridal suite recording, Damien demanding $1.1 million and admitting he had sold my work off the books. I stopped before the discussion of drugging. The room became so quiet I heard the projector fan. Damien looked at Veronica as if waiting for rescue. She did not move. The officers arrested him on a warrant already supported by bank evidence and forged contracts. Serena tried to leave through the loading entrance. Lucia blocked her path, not physically, but by holding up a copy of the consulting invoices while reporters turned their cameras. Julian stared at me. Horror arrived slowly across his face. "Since when have you known?" "Since our wedding." Veronica closed her eyes. "So you heard every word." She opened them again. "You survived the attack." Someone at the back began to clap, believing she had complimented me. The sound died when I crossed the room and stood in front of her. "It wasn't an examination," I said. "It was my life." Veronica lifted her chin. "I did not authorize poison. You authorized people who hated me to determine whether I deserved safety. Whatever word you prefer, you made the room available." Serena watched us with an expression I had never seen on her, not panic, but hatred freed from disguise. As an officer escorted Damien past us, she leaned toward me. "You moved 1 man off the board," she whispered. "You still have no idea what I'm capable of." That night, Lucia found a recent $7,500 payment to an employee hired in the kitchen of Julian's Los Angeles house. The transfer memo contained only 3 words. "Mrs. Lascano's tea." I finally told Julian everything in the conference room above the gallery while police photographed Damien's portfolio downstairs. I played the full wedding recording, including Serena's promise to take my place and Veronica's calm permission to watch me fall. Julian listened without interrupting. When it ended, he walked to the window and stood with his back to me, looking down at reporters gathering on the sidewalk. "My mother allowed this," he said. "Yes." "My sister-in-law planned to drug you in our house." "Yes." "And you carried it alone for 16 days. The accusation in that last sentence was quiet, which made it hurt more. "I carried it until the evidence was safe." He turned. His face had gone pale. "You should have told me. You should have had a family where telling you did not place me in greater danger." He looked as if I had struck him. I hated causing that pain, but I refused to soften the truth for a man whose instinct had been to center his exclusion while my body had been discussed like an obstacle. "I would have protected you. You would have confronted Veronica. Serena would have warned Damien. He would have deleted the accounts and called me jealous. Protecting me is not the same as reacting for me." Julian covered his mouth. For several minutes, he cried without sound. I had seen him grieve his father and lose a hotel deal worth millions, but I had never seen him stripped of certainty. He had built his life around the belief that his mother was severe, not cruel, that Serena was shallow, not dangerous, that the Lascano name could complicate love but not poison it. "Tell me what doing the right thing looks like now," he said. "It starts with accepting that I decide the risk to my body. Not you. Not your mother. Not a board." He nodded. "And after that? We find out what they plan for the tea." Naomi arranged for the kitchen employee, Paige Nolan, to be monitored rather than immediately accused. The $7,500 transfer alone proved little. Serena could claim repayment of a private loan. We needed to know whether Paige possessed a substance, whether a false medical evaluation had been prepared, and who else was involved. The detective advised us not to stage anything dangerous. Every cup I received would be exchanged under camera coverage, and no one would be allowed close enough to inject or restrain me. For 10 days, I behaved as though Damien's arrest had broken me. I cancelled 2 interviews, wore dark glasses leaving the studio, and let Serena hear through a mutual friend that I suffered migraines and memory lapses. The performance disgusted me because it borrowed the symptoms they wanted to impose. Yet it also gave Serena what she had always wanted, a reflection in which I appeared weaker than she was. She began visiting our house in the Hollywood Hills with soup, flowers, scented candles, and false tenderness. Each afternoon, Paige placed a cup of tea in front of me. Each afternoon, I lifted it to my lips, pretended to sip, and later poured it into a sterile evidence container while Julian watched from a security feed in his office. The first 4 cups contained nothing stronger than chamomile. The 5th had an over-the-counter sleep aid in a quantity low enough to be dismissed as contamination. The detective told us to wait. Serena grew bolder. "You look so fragile," she said on her 6th visit, smoothing the edge of my blanket. "Maybe Julian needs someone to help with the foundation. Until you recover." "Maybe," I murmured. Her eyes moved toward the hallway where Julian's footsteps passed. "He has always needed someone who understands his world." "And you think that's you?" She smiled as if forgiving a child. "I think love is sometimes recognizing when another woman can give a man what you can't." Every muscle in my body wanted to throw her out. Instead, I let my hand tremble around the untouched cup. "Could you stay for dinner tomorrow?" "Of course." After she left, I locked the bathroom door and vomited from rage. Julian found me sitting on the tile floor. He crouched several feet away rather than touching me without permission. That small restraint mattered. "End this," he said. "We have enough to keep her away from you. We have enough for a restraining order based on a conversation her lawyer will call fantasy. We do not have the forged incapacity documents or the person she intended to use. If we stop now, she will spend the rest of her life telling everyone I framed Damien and stole you from her." "I don't care what she says." "I do. She helped steal my father's name for 3 years. She tried to turn my career into evidence of madness. I want the truth complete." He sat on the floor across from me. "Then I will follow your plan. But if anyone moves toward you with a weapon or medication, I step in." Agreed. Veronica came the next afternoon without calling. She had dismissed her driver and wore no jewelry except her wedding band. For the first time since I met her, she looked her age. "You're preparing something," she said. "I'm surviving something you permitted." Her jaw tightened. "I did not tell Serena to drug you. You gave her an objective and promised to reward. The result. I needed certainty about who would lead the foundation. Then order an audit. Conduct interviews. Read my record. You don't release a criminal into someone's marriage and call the outcome governance." She looked around the sitting room, perhaps searching for Julian. "What do you want from me?" "Do not warn Serena. Attend dinner tomorrow. And sign a conditional resignation from the foundation presidency. If we prove Serena used your home, employees, or authority to carry out this plan, you step aside immediately." Her mouth hardened. "You are in no position to demand my office." "Then leave. Serena can keep believing you support her, and when this becomes public, the board can decide whether your silence was participation." For decades, Veronica had governed hotels, donors, and relatives by making them fear the consequences of displeasing her. I watched the moment she understood that fear no longer worked on me. She sat in my father's old leather chair and asked to read the resignation. Naomi had drafted it narrowly. Veronica would step down from operational leadership for at least 1 year, authorize an independent governance review, and surrender control over any investigation involving me. It did not give me her position. I had no interest in winning a poisoned throne. "If Serena crosses the line tomorrow, I sign," she said. "You already crossed it at my wedding." For the first time, her gaze dropped. "Then I will sign tonight." That was the second reversal. I had expected Veronica to protect her authority until it destroyed us all. Instead, faced with undeniable evidence of what her test had unleashed, she chose consequence before forgiveness. It did not redeem her. It made her human enough to be held accountable. The next evening, I invited Serena to a private dinner at the Lascano House in Bel Air, where Veronica hosted trustees and foreign donors. I told her I wanted to apologize for humiliating her at the exhibition and discuss taking medical leave from the foundation. She arrived in a blue satin dress carrying a leather folder. With her was a man in his 50s who introduced himself as Dr. Elliot Kane, a psychiatrist specializing in high-functioning creative professionals. He offered no clinic card. His handshake lingered too long. A small medical bag hung from his left hand. Veronica sat at the far end of the dining table, rigid and unreadable. Julian waited with Naomi and 2 detectives in the adjoining library. Cameras installed with Veronica's written consent covered the dining room and pantry. A paramedic stood outside the service entrance. Every safety boundary Naomi had demanded was in place. Paige brought tea before the first course. I watched her set a porcelain cup near my right hand. She would not look at me. Serena opened the folder. Dr. Kane reviewed the videos from your exhibition and statements from people close to you. He agrees you're experiencing acute paranoia after the wedding. He diagnosed me from videos? I asked. Kane folded his hands. This is not a final diagnosis. It is a compassionate intervention. The folder contained a voluntary supervision agreement granting Julian control over my medical care, business decisions, intellectual property licensing, and foundation vote for 90 days. A second document allowed a physician to recommend inpatient evaluation if I withdrew consent after signing. Julian has seen this? Serena leaned closer. He will be relieved when you make the mature choice. Sign tonight, drink your tea, and let people who love him protect what matters. You mean what belongs to me? Her sweetness thinned. You're confused. Am I also confused about the $58,000 Damien paid you? Kane reached toward his bag. Serena's eyes flashed to him, then to Paige. The signal was small but visible. I moved the cup away. What if I don't drink this and don't sign? Serena's face changed completely. Without the tender mask, she looked younger and far more dangerous. Then you prove exactly how unstable you are. Veronica has watched you deteriorate. Julian is exhausted. A court will listen to a doctor before it listens to a woman who stages public revenge fantasies. Kane opened the bag and removed a sealed syringe. Mrs. Lascano, he said, standing, it would be better if you calmed down. I rose and stepped behind my chair, keeping the table between us. Now, Julian. The library doors opened. Julian entered first, fury controlled so tightly that his hands shook. The detectives and Naomi followed. Put it down, one detective ordered. Kane froze. Paige grabbed for the tea, but the second detective intercepted her and covered the cup with an evidence lid. The pantry camera had recorded Paige emptying liquid from a small amber vial moments before service. The syringe in Kane's hand contained a fast-acting sedative. He was not a licensed physician. His medical license had been revoked 8 years earlier after he falsified prescriptions and sold incapacity evaluations during inheritance disputes. Serena turned toward Veronica. You said you wanted proof of what Elena was made of. Veronica looked at her with disgust that arrived years too late. And now I have proof of what you are made of. I did. This to protect Julian. Do not use my name, Julian said. Serena faced him. For a heartbeat, the old confidence returned. You don't understand. She has manipulated you since the day she met you. She wanted your foundation. She made you ashamed of your own family. I'm the one who knows what your life requires. Julian stepped beside me but did not block me from view. You tried to drug my wife, steal her work, and imprison her under a fraudulent diagnosis. There is no version of my life that includes you after tonight. That sentence broke her more effectively than arrest ever could. Serena had built the plot around a private conviction that Julian would eventually recognize her as the better woman. She did not collapse because I exposed her. She collapsed because the man she intended to possess looked at her without even the possibility of desire. Naomi placed the wedding transcript, bank records, false medical forms, and Veronica's signed resignation on the table. These materials have been preserved for state and federal investigators. The foundation will also disclose its governance failure. Veronica said, I am leaving operational leadership today because I tolerated the first attack against Elena. I mistook cruelty for pressure and pressure for proof. I will not ask anyone to call that leadership. Serena stared at the resignation. You would give her everything? No, I said. I don't want everything. The detectives handcuffed Kane and Paige. Serena was detained for questioning and later arrested after a search warrant uncovered messages coordinating the forged diagnosis, the sedatives, and payments. As she was led toward the foyer, she screamed that I had betrayed her. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. In Serena's mind, my greatest offense had always been refusing to surrender what she wanted. The investigation produced a third reversal none of us expected. Damien, facing fraud and conspiracy charges, offered his devices and testimony in exchange for consideration. His archived emails proved Serena had designed the plagiarism accusation 18 months earlier, before Julian and I were engaged. She had researched the Lascano Foundation, introduced Damien to 2 corrupt vendors, and encouraged him to inflate the amount stolen so my finances would appear chaotic. Damien had been greedy, but Serena had built the bridge between theft and marriage. The same emails also proved Veronica had not known about the financial fraud or forged medical plan until the wedding call. She had invited Serena and Damien to pressure test my judgment by feeding a false rumor to the press, an appalling plan on its own. When she heard their expanded scheme in the suite, she objected to physical harm but failed to stop it or warn me. Her guilt was not criminal command, it was arrogance so absolute that she believed she could observe evil without becoming responsible for it. I refused every request for an interview during the first month. Reporters waited outside the studio. Headlines called me the Stone Bride, as if survival required a marketable nickname. Galleries that had ignored me suddenly wanted retrospectives. I asked Naomi to decline all offers connected to the scandal and accept only those based on the work. She smiled and said that distinction would cost me money. Then it costs me money, I replied. Damien eventually pleaded guilty to financial crimes and forgery. The court ordered restitution, though we knew only part of the stolen money would return. Kane faced charges involving controlled substances and impersonating a physician. Paige cooperated and testified that Serena recruited her through a debt relief promise, but cooperation did not erase her willingness to put chemicals in a stranger's cup. Serena's case moved slowly, without the elegant final scene audiences prefer. There were hearings, continuances, sealed exhibits, and legal arguments. Real consequences arrived in paperwork before they arrived in prison clothes. The hardest evidence for me to examine was not financial. It was a folder of messages Serena had saved under the name family. Investigators gave Naomi a copy after redacting unrelated material. I resisted opening it for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I found a history of our relationship translated into strategy. There was a photograph from my first museum opening. I stood beside Serena with my arm around her shoulders. Beneath it, she had written to Damien, "She still thinks bringing me into the room makes her generous." A message from the week Julian proposed read, "The ring is done. Now Veronica will care what happens to Elena's reputation." Another described how to provoke me at family dinners so Veronica would see me as emotional. Buried among those messages was a photograph I had never seen. Serena was 9 and I was 13. We sat on the curb outside our mother's Newport house after a birthday party, sharing a melting ice cream cone because Serena had dropped hers. She had captioned it years later, before she decided she was better than me. I stared at that sentence until the screen blurred. I had never decided that. I had decided I could not depend on our mother, so I learned to depend on myself. Serena had interpreted every act of independence as a judgment of her. When I studied, she thought I was showing off. When I helped her, she believed I wanted gratitude. When I succeeded, she treated it as property taken from a shared inheritance. Understanding the wound did not excuse what she built from it. Still, it changed the way I testified. I refused to describe Serena as a monster. Monsters belong outside human responsibility. Serena had made choices, hundreds of them, over years. She had rehearsed resentment until it became permission. She had been loved, helped, warned, and offered paths that did not require destroying me. She rejected them. At a preliminary hearing, I saw her for the first time since the dinner. She wore a navy suit and no makeup. The moment I entered, she looked toward Julian, not me. He remained beside Naomi and did not return her gaze. Serena's lawyer argued that the dinner had been entrapment engineered by a jealous wife. Then the prosecutor played pantry footage showing Paige measure liquid into my tea before Kane removed the syringe. No speech could make the scene harmless. During a recess, Serena passed close enough to speak without the cameras hearing. "You always win because people feel sorry for you," she said. I looked at the sister whose tuition I had helped pay and whose place beside me at the wedding had once felt like proof that childhood could be repaired. "No, Serena. I survived because you confused my love with permission." She laughed, but her eyes filled. "You took my family. You tried to turn every person into a prize. That is why none of them stayed." The bailiff separated us before she answered. For months, I replayed that exchange and wondered whether I had spoken from strength or cruelty. My counselor said the difference often depends on whether truth is used to establish a boundary or inflict a wound. I had probably done both. The scandal also forced me to confront my father's legacy without turning him into a saint. Matteo had loved me, taught me, and sacrificed for me. He had also refused help, hidden debts, and left contracts in grocery bags because paperwork embarrassed him. Damien exploited those weaknesses. If I reduced the story to a loyal daughter defending a perfect dead father, young artists would learn nothing useful from it. Lucia and I spent several weekends cataloging the workshop. Behind a cabinet, we found invoices showing Matteo had once signed away reproduction rights to 12 carvings for $300. A hotel chain had used those designs for decades. The contract was legal, predatory, and almost impossible to reverse. "This is how Damien knew you would not inspect the terms," Lucia said. "He learned the family pattern." I bristled. My father was not careless with me. He was careless with himself. "You inherited the belief that loyalty makes scrutiny insulting." I wanted to argue, but she was right. Damien had not stolen because I was foolish. He had stolen because I mistook history for proof of character. He was the man who had driven through a storm for me, so I stopped checking whether the destination on later invoices was real. Serena was the sister whose tuition I paid, so I treated access as reconciliation. Veronica called abuse an examination because family authority had protected her from consequence. Each of us had allowed an old story to substitute for present evidence. That realization became the foundation of the program I would later propose. Artists did not only need attorneys after theft. They needed ordinary systems before trust failed, independent statements, rights education, dual approval for transfers, and someone outside the relationship who could ask an impolite question. Meanwhile, the foundation board hired a crisis firm that recommended a glossy campaign about renewal. The draft featured my face, a photograph of Veronica looking remorseful, and the phrase "stronger through adversity." I rejected it in 4 minutes. "This makes institutional failure look like a wellness retreat," I told the interim chair. "Publish the audit. Name the controls that failed. Stop using my survival to improve your brand." He shifted uncomfortably. "The public responds to a human story. Then tell the human truth." A powerful woman decided accountability was optional because she trusted her instincts. A board allowed it because her donations were large. Employees stayed silent because no protected channel existed. Those are human decisions. The board released the audit 6 days later. It was embarrassing, detailed, and useful. Applications from young artists increased rather than decreased. Donors who wanted only prestige departed. Smaller donors wrote that transparency was the first reason they had ever trusted a family foundation. Veronica read the audit before publication and added a statement accepting responsibility. She did not mention me. That restraint was the first apology I believed. One afternoon, she asked to meet at my studio. Naomi advised me to bring someone, but I chose to see her alone with the security camera active. Veronica stood before an unfinished piece made from 2 stones that could not be joined without crushing the softer one. "I used to believe pressure revealed quality," she said. "Pressure also destroys things. My father tested everyone. My husband tested me. I thought surviving gave me the right to continue it. Survival does not make the method wise." She touched nothing. I know that now. I waited for her to request forgiveness, access to Julian, or a path back to the board. She requested none. Instead, she handed me the original employment file for Paige. A vice president had overridden 2 failed references after Serena called from Veronica's office. Veronica had found the approval while reviewing her records. "This belongs with the investigators," she said. "Why didn't you destroy it?" Her expression sharpened, wounded by the question, then softened because she understood she had earned it. "Because the woman who would have destroyed it is the woman I am trying not to remain." After she left, I forwarded the file to Naomi. I did not call Julian to report his mother's progress. Their relationship was theirs to rebuild or end. My role was no longer to translate pain between members of a family that had once treated me as an applicant. Julian and I did not become stronger overnight. For several weeks, we slept in separate rooms. I could forgive his ignorance more easily than his instinct to believe his family's control was normal. He could understand my secrecy intellectually while still grieving that I had not trusted him with the truth. We met with a counselor who refused to let either of us use good intentions as evidence. "What would you do differently?" she asked Julian during one session. "I would question my mother sooner." "That is about Veronica. What would you do differently with Elena?" He looked at me. "I would make it clear that loving me never requires access to her decisions. I would ask what protection means to her before trying to provide it." The counselor turned to me. "I would tell him sooner," I said. "Not at the wedding, when evidence was exposed, but as soon as Lucia secured the accounts. I made a plan around his worst possible reaction without allowing him to show me a better one." Julian reached across the space between our chairs. I did not take his hand immediately. When I did, it was a choice rather than a reflex. Veronica honored every term of her resignation. The foundation hired independent counsel, released a public account of the governance failure, and removed family control from its whistleblower process. Several trustees resigned after admitting they had treated Veronica's personal judgment as oversight. She did not ask to return. 3 months later, the interim board invited me to lead a new program protecting young artists from contract abuse, royalty theft, and predatory representation. I declined twice. The 3rd time, I proposed my own conditions: public audits, an independent advisory council, free legal clinics, no Lascano family veto, and my father's name on the workshop rather than mine. They accepted. The Matteo Robledo Artists' Rights Workshop opened in a renovated warehouse beside my studio. On the first day, 43 painters, sculptors, photographers, and digital artists brought contracts they did not understand. One 22-year-old muralist discovered a gallery claimed perpetual rights to reproduce her work. An elderly woodcarver learned his dealer had withheld sales for a decade. Watching Lucia explain a royalty statement felt more meaningful than any photograph of me beside a donor wall. At the public opening, Julian stood with me beneath a line from my father engraved in limestone: "A crack is not an ending. It is information." He held my hand in front of a wall covered with work by artists who had never before had legal protection. "I'm sorry I didn't recognize danger inside my own house," he said. "I don't need you to live guilty," I told him. "I need you never to confuse peace with silence again. Never again." Veronica arrived alone. There were no photographers, no assistants, and no emeralds at her throat. She waited until the crowd thinned, then handed me a small wooden box. Inside was the stone that had loosened from the necklace on my wedding night, reset as a simple brooch. "It belonged to you from the moment you held it without letting it fall," she said. I closed the box. "I'll keep it as a reminder of what I will never carry around my neck again." Pain tightened her mouth. "That is fair. Fair isn't forgiveness." "I know." She started to leave, then stopped near inheritance, the sculpture the foundation had purchased after an independent committee approved the acquisition. "Your father taught you to repair stone. He taught me to read it. Repair is not always the answer." Veronica looked back at me. "What is?" "Sometimes you reinforce it. Sometimes you build around the break. Sometimes you accept that two pieces should never be forced together again." She nodded once and walked out. That night, Julian and I returned to our apartment. We were not the innocent couple who had danced beneath lanterns at a perfect wedding. That version of us had lasted less than 24 hours. What remained was less beautiful in photographs and more honest in life. Two people who had watched a family fracture, examined their own failures, and chosen to rebuild without pretending the seams were invisible. Serena had wanted my husband, my name, my career, and the authority to declare which parts of me were real. Damien had tried to sell my grief in pieces. Veronica had measured my worth by leaving me alone against people she knew were willing to hurt me. They all forgot where I came from. I had spent years working with broken stone. I knew force could widen a hidden fracture. I knew gold alone could not make damage disappear. Most of all, I knew the difference between restoring something valuable and preserving something dangerous because it had been inherited. On our first anniversary, Julian and I returned to Bellefonte without guests. We stood in the empty bridal suite as evening light crossed the floor. The closet door remained the same. I opened it, smelled cedar, and felt the old terror rise for one breath before leaving my body. Julian did not ask me to forget. He did not turn the room into a lesson about us. He simply stood beside the window until I was ready to leave. Downstairs, the hotel had removed the family portraits from the main corridor during the governance review. In their place hung work by artists from the Robledo workshop, each label listing the artist's ownership rights and the percentage paid directly to them. My favorite was a photograph of a demolished house with wildflowers growing through its foundation. I stopped in front of it. Julian followed my gaze. "Ready?" he asked. I took his hand. The first time I left that hotel, I had carried a recording like a weapon and an emerald like a wound. This time, I carried neither. The truth had already done its work. Behind us, the lights came on one by one, illuminating every crack the family had spent generations trying to hide. I understood then that karma was not a mysterious force waiting in the dark. It was the accumulated weight of choices, records, witnesses, and boundaries finally refusing to bend. My revenge was not taking Serena's place, Veronica's chair, or Damien's money. It was keeping my own name without becoming like any of them. The marriage survived because truth replaced performance. The work survived because ownership replaced blind loyalty. And I survived because, when the fracture finally opened, I stopped calling it a flaw and started reading what it had been warning me about all along.